It's time to open our third eye to new possibilities during this Gemini new moon. Here we are about halfway through the Gemini season, leading right up to this new moon on Monday, June 3rd at about 3 a.m. Pacific. Gemini is about new ideas. It's a very social sign. So here we're looking at new things socially, new plans, activities. It's just a very busy sign. Now, new moons are about new beginnings, and they really set the tone for the rest of the month. So here we find a tone that's being set, a tone of Gemini busyness. And this new moon is at 12 degrees, 33 minutes of Gemini. So it is helpful to know where this lands in your own personal birth chart, where the busyness is most likely to flow through in terms of what house it's located in. Also, if you have, for example, your sun or your moon at, between 10 or 15 degrees of Gemini or any of the mutable signs like Sagittarius, Virgo, Pisces, this will indicate that this new moon period you'll be feeling this more strongly than most. And if you don't know your personal birth chart or you'd like to understand it more intimately, please see the show description because I do have a link to my website and I do offer private readings. So this energy of hyperactivity, of social gatherings, of short distance travel is what you'll hear, commonly astrologers talk about when they're talking about, the Gemini new moon period. And this is all true. It's very valid astrology. But as an evolutionary astrology, I really want to dig deeper. I want to understand the energy that's flowing through human consciousness and understand the archetypes that are really emphasized right now so that we can work with them constructively for our betterment and our evolution. This new moon is opposite Jupiter in Sagittarius, and it's also in a square to Neptune in Pisces, forming what's called a T-square. And I'll get to the meaning of a T-square in a moment. But first I want to point out that these three planets are in mutable signs, Gemini, Sag, and Pisces. So the new beginning, the tone of the month, is very changeable. Mutable signs have a very shifty sort of energy. They're very adaptable, very flexible. They mutate, they move around things. So the tone of the month is much more improvisational, much more malleable. So it's helpful to adopt a kind of a go with the flow sort of energy throughout this month. So we have this T-square here, the moon opposite Jupiter and square to the Neptune. Now oppositions and squares are known as angles that are harder to deal with because they imply friction or tension between the archetypes of these planets in their signs. So they're a little trickier to deal with. So first I want to look at this powerful combination in a more negative light. I want to understand the shadow side potential that's likely to pop up in our lives to varying degrees, again, depending on your own personal birth chart, so we can know what to look out for. Gemini is about facts. It's about information and communication. And Jupiter, this is a powerful Jupiter because it's in its own sign, Sagittarius. Jupiter is about expansion. So we're seeing a massive expansion of information. Jupiter's putting the magnifying glass up to, data in and data out. And then we have this square to Neptune, which can feel a bit confusing, can muddy the waters a bit. Feelings of overwhelm even, or disillusionment. Things not being exactly as they seem, maybe even deception in some cases. On a global scale, the words that come to mind are data dump, a massive amount of information coming out into the public that can be a bit confusing or disorienting even. And interestingly enough, just the other day, mainstream media started, all talking about, UFOs and how UFOs are real and how the military has been, researching UFOs. And I suspect this trend will continue and it will confuse some folks because it's a real paradigm shifter. One more thing to look out for with this combination is with Jupiter expansion. Although Jupiter expansion can be a really good thing, when taken to extremes, it can lead to excess. And with this Neptune as well, with the susceptibility to overwhelm and confusion, can lead some folks to want to check out of reality, escape artist behavior, or sometimes even addiction. And more likely to occur in more, Gemini ways, like through social media or video games, getting drunk on our cell phones, for example. So it's helpful to be aware of this and not to allow the disorienting, hyperactive mental energy to lead us astray into going into oblivion. Nothing wrong with having a little fun, but just be wary of excess. So those are the negative potentials. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's focus on the positive. Neptune is the mystical planet. It's the energy of higher dimensions, of higher states of consciousness. Gemini is the sign of ideas. So here we have Jupiter expanding Neptunian ideas, divine creative inspiration. And this can lead us to thinking big, bigger than before. Big horizons, bigger possibilities. And this can stimulate, joy and optimism and an expansion of consciousness. Anytime you read about Gemini, within the first couple lines, you'll hear the word communication. That Gemini is the sign of communication. And yes, that's true, absolutely. But underlying communication is thought, and underlying thought is perception. It's sort of a three-layer cake there. So really at its core, Gemini is the sign of perception. So here we have Jupiter and Neptune flowing through us, creating this dynamic that wants us to expand our consciousness and change how we perceive reality for the better. Now, where we can take action and position ourselves to receive this beautiful energy is in meditation. Neptune is the planet of meditation, of contemplation and reflection. But do this with the intention that you're ready to receive this divine inspiration. Yes, this is a time for maximum data in and data out, the data storm. But this is where we can find our still point and become the eye of the storm in this more receptive place where you can get the data from above, from higher dimensions. That's what I meant by opening our third eye to new possibilities, because we can get guidance during this time. And it's likely to come through synchronicities in our life, but it can also be direct guidance. This is also a good time in our meditative space to ask ourselves questions, like, how do I perceive myself? How do I perceive the world? How much do I believe in myself? That's a great Jupiter question. It's important not to beat yourself up over these questions, but to ask them neutrally, to ask them with a very Geminian curiosity, and curiously inquire how you can more fully live life through your passions. As I said earlier, Gemini is the planet of thoughts. So during this time, it's really important to be mindful of our thoughts and come from this Neptunian presence of just watching the thoughts go by. And of course, the thoughts will be abundant during this time, a bit of a chattering mind. But if you can just get to a place of almost detachment, watching them happen, seeing the negative thoughts, seeing the positive thoughts, and then when you notice the negative thoughts come up, just choose differently. Choose something from your higher self. With this energy we're working with, this actually makes me think of a Greek Christian mystic named Daskalos. He's no longer with us, but he was a brilliant man. And he taught a meditation to all his students, especially the beginning students. He taught it to everybody because he thought it was so important. And it's called daily introspection. And I really feel it fits the energy we're working with here. And it's really quite simple. When you lay down to go to sleep at night, you slow down your breathing pattern, you start to relax. And as you start to relax, you're getting closer and closer to falling asleep. And during this period when you're relaxing, you're in a meditative state. So in this meditative state, you just recall your day from beginning to end. And you think about, since we're looking at Gemini here, it's like, what did you think throughout the day? Okay. What did you think that you should not have thought? And what did you not think that you should have thought? And then you think of the whole day, how it went. And again, with neutrality. You don't want to beat yourself up here. But you think how your day went. All your thoughts, your actions, and emotions. And then you just recreate the day in your mind that, in your view, is optimal. You know, how you should have thought or felt or acted. And you're doing this in a meditative state. So what you're doing is you're directly working with the subconscious mind. So I really love this meditation for this time because it's very Neptunian, and it's also very Gemini because you're working with the perception of reality, how we think, how we talk, everything. And with this tool, especially during this time, you can help accelerate this process of your perception being tweaked for the better. So that's the Gemini new moon. But I also want to mention that in the beginning of the week, around June 5th, June 6th, there's going to be a shift in energy. So Mercury is going to be entering a new sign, Cancer. Mars has already been in Cancer for a couple weeks. And then the moon leaves Gemini, goes into Cancer, and then meets up with that Mars in Cancer on June 5th. So June 5th, June 6th, look for a little shift in energy. Now, with Mars in Cancer, the emotional reactivity, emotions can be a little bit heightened, a little bit more extreme, more reactive, okay, while Mars is in this sign. And this will be, crescendoing with the moon coming up to it because the moon is about emotions. And the moon actually rules the sign of Cancer, so it's in its own sign. So we turn up the volume on people's emotions. So it's helpful to be aware of this because in your working with this Gemini energy and trying to be the eye in the storm, okay, trying to find that still point in an environment that's, hyperactive. And people's emotions are hyperactive as well, especially towards the middle of next week. It's helpful to know this so that you can begin to recognize that in other people, but also recognize where your own emotional reactivity is coming into play. And try to catch it, right at the beginning and not become overwhelmed by the emotion. And this is where you can practice what I call pivoting. It's like you feel the emotion. It's like, whoop, something's happening here. And then choose something different, okay? Choose something else. Now, emotions can be quite compelling. Sometimes, if we're running hot, they can really take us over. And if that happens, that's fine. It's usually a good idea to remove yourself from that situation and find that still point. Let the emotion go. You say, look, I know I'm feeling this, okay? It may be justified, but I don't want this. I'm choosing something better from a higher state of consciousness. Pivot. It's like I pivot to something else and empower yourself to make different choices. So yes, this Gemini new moon period is a good time for activities, social situations, multitasking, getting things done, having fresh experience. It can be exciting. It can stimulate our curiosity, our wonder and awe, and these are all beautiful things. But also, a lot of mental energy is going to be going on, and it'll be easy with this Neptune square to, again, go into overwhelm. Okay? So by tapping into the Neptune through this more reflective place, you can find that still point and help to pull in energy from higher dimensions, let's say, Neptunian dimensions, to alter how we perceive reality. And this is where we can really accelerate our evolution as people and work with these planets, constructively instead of just being kind of blown around by them. So if you liked this video, please hit subscribe and the notification bell, like, share it with your friends, comment if you like, and I'll see you on the next video.